welcome to episode 13 of Last Turn. I'm Bart. Today I'm joined with Evan, and we have quite some changes ahead of us, don't we, Evan?
Yeah, like even just hearing you talk about it, I'm like sweating. Like I have to do something. Like I'm the one that has to implement the changes. Yeah, I don't even know how to feel.
Yeah, it's I feel something intense. So a lot of ancient and beloved Hearthstone cards are being changed in an upcoming update. We don't know exactly when, but assumedly quite soon. Uh, and those cards are Innervate, Fiery War Axe, Hex, Murloc War Leader, and Spreading Plague. Each of them changed to address some particular problems with the cards, the current metagame, and how the cards interact with other cards. But oh boy, we want to dive deep on these today because there is a lot to say about them.
Yeah, it's definitely. Each one is more one reason than another. There's a lot of the reasons you listed overlap for the cards, but some are a lot more for meta versus others being more for future design.
Yeah.
Space being the reason why they were changed, but yeah, some cards close to our hearts, close to our faces, being drastically changed. It's an emotional time in the Hearthstone community.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, there's certainly some strong feelings about this. Just if you check the pulse of the community and go to the Hearthstone Reddits or anything, it's the whole front page was about these for the 2 days after it was announced. It's just there's been so much discussion. A lot of streamers and professional players have put up videos about this stuff that really talk about these changes in depth and offer their opinions. There's a wide range of opinions on these. We want to sort of add to that pile our own thoughts.
Contribute to the pile.
Yes, but it's certainly not obvious what the implications of these changes are, but there will certainly be implications.
It's obvious to me that it has emotionally affected me. And I've just been staring at Fire War Axe in my collection, thinking about the good times.
That was the
one. Thinking about the bad times.
Yeah, that was the one for me too. It's just like I felt like when I clicked the link and I saw that Fire War Axe was being nerfed, it was like I clicked like a not safe for work link or something.
Yeah, or like this is like an early April Fool's like it's just complete it's got to be a joke, right?
Yeah, I didn't we talk about Fiery War Axe nerfs like in episode 2? I think we did.
It's probable. I don't actually remember what we said though, honestly.
I think I know we've definitely talked about it, and I know we talked about it on air, and I think we may have concluded that it's just so unlikely that they would change the card because it's so core to Warriors class identity, and changing any of the numbers on the card such that the card becomes weaker makes it like go from its very, very good state now to like a pretty mediocre state.
And yeah, completely missing on what the card is supposed to be, like flavor wise.
Yeah, it's I mean, yeah, we can definitely talk about it. I think that I agree that's certainly the most emotional one for me. But perhaps we should just start at the top of this page here with Innervate.
Yeah, usually, very, very often a great place to start, Innervate.
Yeah, a lot of games have started and probably ended with Innervate. So Innervate used to read gain 2 mana crystals this turn only, and now it reads gain 1 mana crystal this turn only. So it is literally coin.
Yeah, it's the counterfeit coin card that Rogue gets.
Yep, same card.
But it's a Druid card. I mean, the main issue for me, honestly, is like that. Really, this is supposed to be a Druid card. Why is it, a card that starts in your hand in every class and also a Rogue card?
So I understand that because this game does not have a lot of cards like that. Even the cards that are similar and play the same role are, they have subtle differences between the class. So like Darkbong versus Frostbolt, or like Eviscerate versus Frostbolt, or Rallying Blade versus Eaglehorn Bow versus Fire War Axe, apparently.
Yeah, SI-7 Agent versus Disciple of Cthulhu.
Yeah, so it's bizarre for two classes to have the same card, effectively a functional double printing of the same card. It's strange, but no matter, it certainly weakens the card pretty considerably.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't cut its power in half. It's more diminishing than that.
Yeah, certainly.
It's even though the number on the card has been cut in half, the deal that you're getting is way less than half as insane as it used to be.
Yeah, it's not the best deal anywhere, that's for sure. It's it's like, so Innervate was really important in pretty much every single Druid deck. I mean, the only Druid list that I'm aware of that doesn't run Innervate is like Eggs, Druid, and Wild, and I think that deck is, I don't think it's really around too much anymore. Definitely was pretty weak in the Wild Open, but also a lot of Egg Druid lists did run Innervate, and certainly the aggressive, just straight up aggro token Druid list in Wild also ran Innervate. And in Standard, it's in every Druid list. So, most recently, Innervate is used to get out Vicious Fledgling on turn 1 or Crypt Lord, but also to get out your Ultimate Infestation as early as turn 4. Did that a couple times today.
Nice.
Oh, it feels so good. But not for me, not my opponent. But it accelerates you. It allows you to play off curve, and just get out cards way earlier than they ought to be out, before your opponent can really answer them efficiently, or while your opponent is still in the middle of developing, you can put down a big taunt, or just while they're doing nothing and just hero powering for value and stuff, you can ramp up way out of range of them and the kinds of cards that they're playing and the kinds of answers that they have.
Yeah, and also, like the amount of goodness that you get from a Hearthstone card as it increases in cost is like not a constant. Like when you pay 1 mana more, you're getting some exponential amount of better card. Like the difference between a 4 mana minion and a 6 mana minion, like playing Jade Spirit versus having Innervate and playing Aya.
Yeah.
That is a really big jump.
Oh yeah.
And saying like Acidic Swamp Ooze covers that gap, like, isn't really fair. Like,
No,
Aya's
no.
a lot better than just +2/+2 or +3/+2 on the card. That's kind of what I'm saying. So the extra mana crystal from Innervate that Innervate used to give, let's say, is more than just like a 1 drop's worth of extra value.
Yeah.
And that's why this is more than cutting it in half in power. Another reason, actually,
Yeah.
why it's more than just cutting it in half in power, and really just makes it something that you need some kind of synergy with, like Violet Teacher, which is kind of old school, but that did happen, or Gadget Set Auctioneer. It really
Yeah.
seemed like the only ways that this card continues to be played in Standard.
I definitely think it weakens it a lot. I'm still ambivalent as to whether it's going to kill the card altogether. I think that being able to play your ramp spells even just one turn early is pretty strong, and that might earn it. And a deck like Jade Druid can just draw so many cards that it doesn't care that it's spending a card in a deck slot on something as weak as a coin.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it won't take it out of that deck. And actually, for a completely different reason, in something like Aggro Druid, the deck has like some builds have like an insane numbers of 1 drops, like 8 or more, or 10 or more. So in that case, that allows you to play like another one of your cards. But that, then again, in the current builds of Aggressive Druid, a lot of the reason you had Innervate is so that you can get out an early 3 mana play, or get out Bittertide Hydra early.
Yeah, it really, those cards both take a huge hit from this change.
Oh yes.
And the amount that you can get, the amount of wins you can get out of Innervate is also significantly lower.
Oh, yeah.
Now it can just let you do a fair thing. And doing a fair thing for an entire card isn't really what you want to do in that deck. You want to
No.
do lots of unfair things.
Yeah, I mean, let's like a concrete example. one that I think we're probably both familiar with is old innervate. Let's say you're on the play and you innervate out Vicious Fledgling and your opponent's a Paladin. They really just don't do anything. I mean, they can Righteous Protector now, but they used to not have that. So in Ongoro, they had basically no way to deal with that at all, period. Now, you play a 1-drop, you pass, they do whatever, they pass, you innervate your Fledgling, then they coin out Rallying Blade and kill it. So now innervate still advances you on the Fledgling, getting it out a turn early is still really good, but the class that was the weakest to it now has access to their answer to the Fledgling.
And just every deck gets another turn to draw it.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, this really, I mean, is the biggest hit Druid could possibly have gotten. Really, is nerfing Innervate.
Yeah, I mean, as a class, the class as a whole for sure, it affects all of their decks.
But we were talking about last week how it kind of was necessary, so here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was I don't know exactly who said this, but definitely I read it or heard it in some Magic context. In that game, cheating on mana is like one of the most broken things you can do in the game, and that's true in Hearthstone too.
Yeah,
I think that this season has told us that pretty clearly with the dominance of the decks that are currently dominant. The Druid decks. Part of the reason they're so strong is that they can just either accrue insane tempo or insane value for way earlier than they ought to be able to get that. Either by innervating out a ton of 1-drops in a Mark of the Lotus, or by innervate, nourish, and Jade Blossoming out in Ultimate Infestation. And the ability to do either of those things, either get massive tempo or massive value, faster than your mana should allow you, just using more resources than you really have access to naturally, just allows you to win a lot of games.
Yeah, and actually even disregarding necessarily the balance or fairness of the card, but another reason why, or basically my favorite reason why they changed it, is that it's always been like a 2 of in every Druid deck. We sort of mentioned that earlier. Now that it's weakened, there's sort of more space in Druid. As a deck designer, you have more options. Basically, there used to be 2 slots that were always occupied, and so this frees up those spots and allows what they really want to do is allow for the new cards that they print to be more relevant.
Yeah, certainly. That's a really interesting point, because there are a lot of cards that are like that. Frostbolt, Fireball are 2 others. Old Fiery War Axe most certainly was such a card.
Yep.
So these types of cards do exist, and I think it's okay for them to exist, and I think if they do exist, they should be in basic, which is as Innervate, Fire War Axe were. But on the other hand, yeah, I think it's probably ideal if all of your cards are awesome in some situations, but not every situation. You just have a more interesting and varied game if that's the case. Although I think that some amount of that is okay.
Yeah, and possibly unavoidable.
Yep.
But that was also the thinking behind Hall of Faming Azure Drake and the like, Ragnaros.
Yeah.
Power Overwhelming. Just people weren't playing new cards, new 6-drops, new 8-drops weren't being played. Play those instead.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more dangerous for neutral cards, but a card like Innervate is that can make a lot of other cards degenerate, like Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah. So I'm ready for the next degenerate card that is, I guess, becoming generate.
Yeah, it's so the next one is Fiery War Axe. Fiery War Axe used to cost 2 mana, and now it costs 3, and that's the change.
Yeah, so I mean, the part that feels the worst about this is that it's just strictly worse than so many cards that exist. When it used to be insanely good, one of the best Hearthstone cards, period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fire War Axe
you would want them
insane.
to keep it still at least kind of good, and the fact that it is strictly worse than so many cards is like a kick in the nuts.
Yeah, it's a little bit painful. I think that there were a lot of bad feelings about Fire War Axe. Ultimately, it took me a day or two of sort of getting past them, but I feel like the change makes sense and it's acceptable, and now the card is a lot more fair because in its previous state it was unfair. On the other hand, yeah, Warrior's the weapon class, and having access to such a strong weapon is like totally on flavor. Uh, so
Yeah, and
it
it
seems
doesn't do
okay.
anything. It doesn't do anything fancy. It has no text.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. But it was like very overstated for its cost. I
Yeah.
mean, the nickname Fiery Winaxe is it's not unearned. It's
Hmm.
certainly a deserved nickname. But at 3 mana, this card's going to be a lot more. It's going to be, yeah, pretty much identical to cards like Eaglehorn Bow and Rallying Blade. Technically strictly worse than those cards, but in a lot of cases exactly the same. But those cards are fine Hearthstone cards. They're totally playable. Um, I think that one of the biggest impacts this has is that Pirate Warrior's 2-drop slot is pretty weak. It has like
Yeah.
Bloodsail Raider, and it had Fire War Axe and Heroic Strike. And like on 2 mana, you pretty much just want to play Bloodsail Raider, but like a lot of times you actually don't want to play that on turn 2 because you don't have your War Axe out yet or something.
Hmm.
Like sometimes you'll actually wait on playing that, so it's not even necessarily a good 2-drop. So now the deck doesn't really have any unconditional 2-drops.
Yeah, and so that's probably one of the best things about this change is how brutally it hurts Pirate Warrior, which
Yeah.
has just been such an obnoxious deck that hasn't been going anywhere.
Yep. We talked about that.
And really can limit how cute you want to make your deck because pirates do not have any time for that, and you just die to Arcanite Reapers.
Yep.
This is good for that reason, and also the same reason as we mentioned with Innervate in that it was always taking up a spot in the deck. It's still probably going to be really good in most standard warrior decks,
Hmm.
ultimately, which is another reason it's probably a fine change. Like, if you
Yeah.
can add
Right.
a whole mana to the card's cost, and almost every deck would still use 2 copies of it, it was undercosted before, and there was something wrong with it before. But now in standard, there's at least a possibility of using newer cards. It's going to be easier for them to make strong new warrior weapons because they're not going to be like, wow, we're going to give them this and Fiery War Axe at 2 mana.
Right.
They have more. It would be more fair for them to print a new, cool, strong 2 mana warrior weapon, which would have maybe been way too unfair prior to this change. So it gives them design space. Um, but
Yes.
but yeah, this is way sweeter of a punishment to pirates than nerfing any pirate card.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely one point of discussion that has been abound is like if you wanted to nerf pirate if pirate warrior was the problem, you could just nerf a pirate card and that wouldn't have such a lasting impact on warrior. But I think it's okay to nerf Fiery War Axe because of how prominent and how powerful the card is, and like how much of a difference it makes when you have it in your hand and when you play it on turn 2 than when you don't. Like the
Hmm.
you're just so much more favored to win. Like if you're playing either a tempo based deck or a control deck, and your opponent's playing any deck that's trying to develop in the first 2 or 3 turns, and you play Fiery War Axe on 2, you have such an advantage.
Yeah,
And
you can devastate like so many starts for so many different decks. Mana Worms, Noble or Northshire Clerics. Like it's not just the aggro decks even.
yeah, the absolute best 1-drops in the game, like pretty much all of them are dead to Fire War Axe, except for the ones with Divine Shield. And like that is a little bit oppressive. It makes those cards worse. And it just makes it gives Warrior this sort of like unvarying threat that they can always put down, which is like fine for class identity, but it's really strong, probably too strong. So I think that they took this as an opportunity to change it. And it also happens to hurt a problem deck in the format. So that's how I like to view this change. That's how it makes sense to me. Is that they were
Hmm.
taking something too strong away from a class, um, and that was like their fairly elegant solution to dealing with the fact that that class had a problem deck in the format.
Yeah, and it also arguably would hurt the non-problem decks like Taunt Warrior less because they do have like way more they play like Slam or plenty of things you can play for 2 mana.
Yeah.
And Fire War Axe is still like a good potential removal card. Whereas in Pirate Warrior, it would just abuse the unreal efficiency of Fire War Axe with like upgrades and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and be a
yeah.
lot more cheaty with how unfair it was. So I think it also doesn't hurt the other decks as much as it hurts Pirate Warrior. So that's another good thing about it, is as much as it, once again, it's like weird looking at the picture right now. Like I'm like a mirage or something like that, but there's a silver lining.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so next up we have the hex change. So this one definitely caught us all by surprise,
Yeah.
but it makes sense to me. I like the reason they gave, and anyway, so same card just costs 4 mana. So they just increase the mana cost by 1. This makes the card a lot more like Polymorph, which is for this kind of effect, I guess 4 mana is this is how much they think it should cost, being
Hmm.
able to silence a minion and then kill it pretty unconditionally. So I like that. I mean, what makes this change so strange is that Hex was just not seeing play in Shaman, in the Shaman deck.
Yeah, there's just nobody playing Hex, and then all of a sudden Blizzard's like, we gotta make Hex weaker, and like, what?
Yeah, so
What?
it's a weird time. I can understand why they are doing that. I think that they're pretty judicious about how frequently they make any changes to their cards, and I think they like to do it in bunches. And that
Hmm.
kind of makes sense because the community can anticipate when it's going to happen. I mean, everybody knew this patch was happening. Everyone knew it.
Yeah,
Like, even before there was any official confirmation, people were just screaming for nerfs and new nerfs were inevitable, and we're talking about nerfs as if they were going to happen.
yeah.
Um, so it makes sense to me that they do this change now, even if it seems kind of off the wall. And I don't think we should give them any flack for that because ultimately, like, if they were changing cards every patch, you wouldn't want to spend any dust.
Yeah, though they do refund you pretty handsomely, which is nice.
Well, yeah, but they
Um,
won't if you craft like Raza and they nerf Shadow Reaper Anduin, they're not going to refund you Raza.
that's a good point. And yeah, this change must have been something they had been thinking about for a while. And I do agree. I do like their explanation that it's just not, Shaman's not supposed to be doing this well. Um, and that we want to make Shaman do other things really well. So if we
Yeah.
weaken this thing, we can make other cards better in future sets. It's sort of another example of that. Um, but it was mostly just surprising.
Yeah, so one reason why this change makes sense to me is like so they give this class identity argument and I think that I like that. I think I like the idea of class identity and I agree that it's tough. Shaman's class identity is not totally clear to me, but it
Hmm.
seems like over the past couple expansions with the evolve and devolve type effects, they seem to have found something that Shaman can do.
Yeah.
And Devolve is a lot like Hex. In fact, like whenever I was constructing decks that might have wanted Hex or considering a single copy of Hex, it often was replacing a copy of Devolve. Cycling it in and out with Devolve. Devolve and Hex, in my mind, occupied a really similar spot. And it's just, do you expect to want to knock down a lot of things or do you expect to want to knock down one really big thing? And that
Hmm.
would tell you what you should play. So trading off power between those types of cards, weakening one and keeping the other untouched, or printing more of the devolve type card and weakening hex. That makes perfect sense to me.
Hmm.
Um, maybe this allows them to print a card in the future that's like a single target devolve for very little mana, or maybe single target devolve for 2 with a cantrip or something.
Yeah, or sort of like a reverse Master of Evolution.
Yeah, yeah, or like yeah, staple to a minion, like totally.
That'd be
That's
solid.
It would be, but it could like depending on the nature of threats or cards that other classes and other decks were playing. If Shaman had access to effectively 6 hexes, then that could be too much.
Yeah, it
Uh,
it'll depend on that, or I mean, it could also just be solved by making it an expensive minion, like a 7 mana 6/7 taunt or something that does that
yeah,
with
sure.
some mana overload.
That sounds miserable. I mean, if it's
Yeah,
gonna have overload, it's gonna cost like 3.
All right, three
overload that
mana,
too.
6/7 taunt.
That sounds great. That's
With the devolve effect, ETB.
right. Just staple overload 2 to it, and you have a shaman card.
Shaman. Also, it summons a random totem
Yeah, right. Yeah. It summons Totem Golem
every time.
every single time. Yeah. So this changed a little off the wall. I think that like in terms of immediate impact, this will have the least immediate impact, or maybe
Hmm.
not. It depends on if Shaman gets a really good deck out of all of these changes, which is a total possibility. Then maybe that's the kind of deck that would have really liked to run Hex.
Yeah, maybe it only runs one copy, or just can't even use it and has to hope the two copies that evolve is enough. But yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately the answers to why it happened is they'd been wanting to do it, and it's been at least months that it was an idea. And like you said, they just do them in groups.
Yep. Yeah, so I think it's fine. And I also, I think maybe the way I spoke about it a little earlier made it sound like Hex is not a card anymore. I think it's totally a fine Hearthstone card still.
Oh yeah, that's another reason why the change is obviously fine. Just like with the Fire War Axe change, it's still gonna get used. So obviously, it's not killing the card. It's still a good card.
Yeah, totally. So next up we have Murloc War Leader.
Hmm.
So this one, I've seen a range of responses to this particular nerf.
Hmm.
Murloc War Leader used to give all your Murlocs +2/+1, and now it just gives them 2 attack.
I mean, one of their reasons was that the one health could get confusing sometimes, and I do remember sometimes of ambiguity with that. So I think that at least is a good point.
Hmm.
And it's still a good Murloc. It's still
Oh
one of the
yeah.
best Murlocs, which is another reason why I think it's fine. But I
Yep.
guess have you read of anyone being really upset?
So
Any
I forgot
fish
exact.
people?
I forgot who exactly said this, but the argument I heard was that this hurts like the potential problem was Murloc Paladin, and this hurts all of the Murloc decks, and that
Yeah.
instead, like even people who crafted the Shaman Quest, like the people who had that deck, which is a weak deck, their deck just got weaker, and
But
all the water package, which was traditionally used to fill out slots in decks that didn't have access to good tempo minions, also just got considerably weaker.
yeah, that probably took the biggest hit.
Yeah.
Um, and this is all true, but like that does make this seem like the most wrong change, but ultimately this allows them once again to make more good Murlocs later.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, for sure.
That's
Right.
that's like you gotta, if you're a real Murloc lover, this really sucks because that one health is really like tight on this card. Like it
Oh yeah.
basically like in case you know if your minion was damaged and this gave it that health and then the Murloc War Leader died, it would keep that health. So it could even give a permanent improvement to some of your minions. Um, so it's just like really great. But if you're feeling blue, just gotta think about next set, something like that, and
Yeah.
and and hopefully better Murlocs will come then because this one's been toned down.
Yeah, I also think it's still a good card, and Murloc Paladin will still want to play it. And I don't think it makes I mean, it obviously weakens the deck a little bit, but the deck is still going to be close to the level of power than it was before. Um,
Hmm.
it's just that like if they happen to put down Righteous Protector and then land 2 Murlocs and play War Leader, it won't feel like you just lost. You'll still be able to answer it with they answer their board with the answers that you happen to have in your hand. Like if you are running Lightning Storm or you're running like Maelstrom Portal or something,
Hmm.
you'll be able to take out some of their guys. So that does make sense to me. Um,
Yeah, it gives control decks more of an answer, and you're right. Murloc Paladin will still be really good.
yeah.
Um, and my main concern personally was Anyfin Paladin. I think it really doesn't change Anyfin Paladin's plan very much.
Oh no.
If anything, it might just people might not use Finja as often. Like you said, it hurt that combo. So
Yeah.
maybe there'll be less Finja and Murloc Paladin, but Finja's got pretty great synergy with Spikered Steed, so that might just stay in anyway.
Yeah, I think its synergy with Spiker Steed is like that, and the fact that it's just does synergize the deck. It helps you go wide, so that you can put down a war leader and have it be strong. That's probably going to keep it in
Hmm.
the Murloc Paladin builds, at least some of them. That deck's a lot of different lists, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do think it's okay ultimately that this was changed. Like I had a conversation with some people recently about Hunter and
Hmm.
why Hunter is doing so poorly. Hunter's classically the go face class, and they are usually like they do one thing. They try to place minions down and win with them. They just and they have beast synergies, right? They're supposed to have the best beast, and they do. They have Savannah Jaime. That's like the best beast, but um they don't have anything even remotely close to Murloc War Leader. Like,
Yeah.
this card is just, when you want to talk about like lords, this is an insane lord. I mean, even look at South Sea Captain that just gives +1/+1. It's like it's a strictly worse Murloc War Leader. But it's still good. It still sees play. Um, this is Hunter doesn't have anything even really close to those cards. Like it can't even hold a candle to Murloc War Leader,
Yeah.
and it can't even come close to the captain. So the fact that this is getting toned down makes sense to me, because now, like, when you look at this and Captain side by side, it doesn't look quite as strange. But
Hmm.
also, like,
That's a good point.
maybe it makes Hunter a little bit more viable because, like, none of their cards got touched, and the premier aggro decks that are not Hunter got nerfed a little bit.
Yeah, that's definitely a benefit of this whole change I hadn't thought about. Maybe open some space up for Hunter.
Yeah.
Um, because I do feel like they at least got some good cards and have some good cards.
Yeah, they do.
Um,
I mean, Hunter absolutely has some strong cards. It's just that, like, the other tempo-based early game decks in the format were way, way, way stronger.
and there's also 5 mana Spreading Plague.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing that sort of hurt all aggro decks. And that is also the next change. So Spreading Plague costs 6 mana instead of 5 now. Um, I don't think that this makes the card really any worse.
Yeah, it's still definitely an insane card, and Druid's definitely going to keep using at least one copy, if not two, because it just could completely win the game for you against pretty much any aggro deck, just on its own.
Yeah. I was running one for a while and I went up to two.
Same.
Yeah, it's so good, and I think, like, I might try going down to one, but maybe I'll just go right back up to two. So, but this nerf, I don't super like this nerf. So first of all, the stats that Blizzard is telling us about, that they did, being like one of the best performing cards in, um, the
Mm.
mid range and the Jade Druid decks, like, that doesn't match up with the stats the community has been looking at,
Okay.
and I fully acknowledge that can be a possibility, because it could be that, like, Blizzard hires people to do this full time. So they're probably looking at better stats. They obviously have access to more data. They're
Hmm.
probably considering something a lot more holistic than just rank 5 to legend.
Yeah.
And, so I'm inclined to believe Blizzard when they say it's one of the best performing cards, especially because, the stats that the community looks at does have obvious flaws. A lot of people look at, like, win rate when played, but that's just like, that's not the right stat. You need to look at win rate when drawn and win rate when
Ye
played.
yeah, like if you look at how often you win when you play a 10 mana card, like it's probably gonna be a lot because you got the 10 mana and played that card.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's why Ultimate Infestation win rate probably looks so high, is because, like, yeah, I mean, actually it does do an insane thing, that's for sure. But you want to see win rate when drawn. And actually you do have it to an extent, because people have looked at win rate when kept in opening hand, and it's like still absurd.
Oh
So
my.
yeah, I know you have a problem when people are not mulliganing their 10 mana cards.
It's
Um,
not called penultimate infestation.
it is certainly the ultimate infestation. Well, no, the first one is the penultimate infestation.
Yeah, that's true. It'd be really funny if they're like we're nerfing ultimate infestation to 11 mana. You need to use your innervates to play it.
I think you can't innervate past 10.
That would make it an even funnier thing for them to say.
Oh yeah, because then it'd be like wild only. You have to play it with Thorsan or something. Um, or like Naga Sea Witch, which is apparently very broken and wild because it reduces the base cost of giants. So like,
Oh wow, that's cool.
yeah.
Does the 3/4? Wow, maybe we should be playing the 3/4 and hit Ultimate Infestation. You know what I'm talking about? The Scout?
Oh yeah, the
Oh
Sprite Eyed
my.
Scout.
And
Yeah,
now it can
that's.
hit Spreading Plague and lower its cost.
Oh my God, you can play pre-nerf Spreading Plague. Yeah, that's the real tech. You just have to run 2 scouts,
Oh my.
win every time. Um, yeah, so I don't really like. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like this change. So
Mm.
definitely, again, it's I don't know, I don't see the data that they see. So we have to have some amount of trust. But like, it took me a while to think about this one because it felt like, okay, this changes the card, but this is a card that you're not trying to play necessarily on curve. Certainly not as on curve as like Innervate or Infestation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like it doesn't matter as much if it's a 5, 6, or even a 7 mana card. The change it doesn't do a whole lot to the card, and it doesn't feel like it's the problem card in the deck. I mean, it's certainly a problem card. Like there are a lot of matches that you just shouldn't win. You play Spreading Plague and you win them.
Mm-hmm.
But um, the other thing, what irks me is that like that's against the Swarm type aggro decks. Like the aggressive Druid, Pirate Warrior, and Murloc Paladin, to a lesser extent Pirate Warrior, but still Pirate Warrior. But they weakened all of those decks.
Yeah, it's
So
counterintuitive.
yeah, to me it doesn't that's what doesn't jive so well is that like one of the strongest tools Druid had available to it was its anti-aggro tool, and in the same patch that they weaken all the aggro decks, they weaken its anti-aggro tool. So if the aggro decks do get weaker on average, which we should expect them to, because like the reason that people weren't playing Rogue and Hunter is because those decks were slower than, Paladin, and Warrior and Druid aggro. So if those decks go away and people start playing the other aggro decks, we can still expect them to be slower. But slowing down the anti-aggro tool then like might not actually matter. It might not make a difference.
Yeah, I one of my thoughts, I like, yeah, it's like paradoxical, but if the rate at which it won games was so high, that means it probably was winning a lot of games against control decks too.
Oh
And
yeah, for
I've
sure.
had this against other druids. It doesn't
Oh, it's
matter
so
what they're
good.
playing, and just tons of other classes, and you just wait. Like you don't, because your game plan is like so insanely impervious. At every turn that passes, you just get closer to having a deck that's all Jade Idols. At which point you can't lose anymore. Really, it
Yep.
doesn't matter what your opponent's doing; they're going to lose to that. So just being able to let time pass and let your opponent put more out and then put them behind even further for having committed that much via Spreading Plague was just so good for Jade Druid's plan, really no matter what deck it was playing against. Um, Plus, also the synergy with Mr. Bolster can be like really obnoxious.
Mm,
And now it's a little bit harder to do that. Or even its synergy with like Mark of the Lotus can be really
yeah,
obnoxious.
totally.
So it also makes some obnoxious things happen a little bit less often. But I think when it was so good against Control, also, um, weakening it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that like there were some control decks it was really good against, particularly J Druid, which is like the control deck in the format. One control deck that was not good against was Priest. Like Priest has like max 1 minion out.
Well, actually, I mean, one reason we might not have been seeing really any Dragon Priests is this card.
That's
This
true.
this wasn't
That's
helping.
true. Yeah. I mean,
There was
that's true.
also the combo priest definitely is pretty upset by this card.
Yeah.
The one that tries to use Inner Fire and Divine Spirit. Um, and we definitely postulated on a priest aggro deck that never came to fruition. This is not the only reason.
Yeah.
Spreading Plague's not the only reason, but um, at least Dragon Priest was pretty bummed out by this card. Twilight
Yeah,
Drake
that's
does
that's
not
true.
stack up well against it.
Yeah, it's always tough to consider these nerfs because it's not just like, you aren't just considering all of the decks that do exist. You have to consider the ones that can exist, and I definitely wasn't doing that. You're right though. Like the combo priest decks tended to be pretty minion heavy. But even they went as deep as like Kalento's version, which was super super minion heavy. Ran Light Wardens.
Yeah, I ran
And
one. That was fun.
oh yeah, it's really fun to hit with that card. But so the current sort of big priest or the Razakus priests might not have been affected by this, but a lot of other potential priest decks could have been. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like evidence of it is that the only viable priest decks were the very low minion ones.
Yep. Yeah, sure. So those are all the cards they changed, and they highlighted two that they didn't change. And I think that bears some discussion as well. So
Oh yeah,
you can't really talk about Druid without talking about Ultimate Infestation, and that's a card that they didn't touch at all. So this is a card that everybody knows is very good.
Mhm.
It's really core to Jade Druid's game plan. In fact, it's like pretty much the first thing I think about is getting mana, and the reason I want to get mana is so that I can get Ultimate Infestation. So I'm trying to simultaneously max out my mana and draw Ultimate Infestation. And once I've done that, I just want to play it. And then once I played it, it's usually pretty straightforward. You just play dudes until you win.
Yeah, you just play whatever's in your hands at that point.
Which is, like a sixth of your deck. Or a third, up to a third of your deck is just in your hand. So, it's fine. They didn't touch this card at all, despite its obvious power. And the reason that they give is because they touched Innervate, and toning down Innervate is an Ultimate Infestation nerf because it's not coming out as early anymore, which is great. And yeah, they want to sort of wait and see, which I think is fine. It's better to not slam all of the class's tools at once and then make it super weak. It would be fine if now it was just like a little bit better balanced, but it still had access to a really strong effect like Infestation.
Yeah, if they're changing, I mean, when they're doing what they did to Innervate and Spreading Plague, then I don't think they needed to also touch Ultimate Infestation.
Yeah.
And if, they got to be honest to the numbers, and if Spreading Plague is really what was winning too much, that's the card they should change. And, like, I guess an option could have been change Ultimate Infestation and Spreading Plague, but, like, it would really feel bad to change two new cards. Ideally they're touching as few as possible. And the fact that they made the concession on Spreading Plague at all is definitely significant, and a big indicator of how strong Druid really was, that it needed both of these cards to be nerfed. But I'm glad they left Ultimate Infestation the way it is. We got to have some fun, right?
I mean, I'm going to be casting a lot of Ultimate Infestation after this patch drops.
And
I hope.
Yeah, but really, nerfing Spreading Plague and Innervate really hurt Ultimate Infestation. So I definitely think it's fine that they left that as it is. And like I said it before, I'll say it again. It costs 10. There's a lot of degenerate things that can be done and can happen to you before you get to play it. Especially when it Innervate's not 2 mana.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this will make Nourish a real choice again. It used to just be that you kind of went for mana if you had Infestation in your hand, or if you didn't have Infestation and you had a bunch of other ramp you could draw, but most of the time you just want to go for mana because Infestation's in your deck. So maybe now, because you don't have access to Innervate after you cast Infestation, so you can't Innervate out a Wrath or something like that, you might start nourishing for cards again.
Yeah, you might need to play fair.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you might need to, when you play your 17 mana worth of card value for 10 mana card. Yeah, you just need to play fair. But also, so one concern though, the fact that they didn't touch Ultimate Infestation, is that they nerfed. Like we said earlier, they nerfed a bunch of the aggro decks, so they did slow things down, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
Slowing things down and not counterbalancing one of the strongest endgames is, fishy, but it could be that against the type of decks that end up surviving, Infestation is not just the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, the Skulking Geist. This puts more weight on Skulking Geist's shoulders and is going to give that card that they printed, hoping it could be a solution to. Really, I mean, Ultimate Infestation is like particularly insane and against like a Fatigue Warrior because the deck was endless. When the deck
Right.
isn't endless, Ultimate Infestation is not nearly as insane against certain control decks. And so this is going to allow their previous attempt at a solution to hopefully actually pull it off, rather than needing to manually change another card.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like, so the other thing is that the fact that they nerfed like Pirate Warrior in particular, but also, you know, Aggressive Druid, is that like other classes and other decks that can do decently against Jade Druid, like Miracle Rogue, were just annihilated by those decks. You know, Miracle Rogue, like, I loved when I'd play Pirate Warrior and my opponent was a rogue. It's just so good because they don't run any life gain, they don't run any taunts. You just send everything to the dome and like you take a trade when it looks really good and you win the matchup pretty easily. And they just like they try to do a bunch of stuff and they have to like tempo out really hard and then hit a win condition really fast. And that's how they can beat you. But a lot of the games you're just going to win because they can't deal with your onslaught and they're going to spend all their time trying to.
Yeah.
Like, but those decks, you know, the Pirate Warrior deck is going to be a lot weaker. It's going to be a lot less oppressive now. So maybe Miracle Rogue can exist. And like Vanish really messes up Jade Druid. When you vanish like a 9/9 Jade Golem, that thing is just a brick.
Yeah, you basically killed it.
Yeah, it's more or less gone, except it also eats a card slot in their hand. And like that makes their other Ultimate Infestation a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you know, it does do something pretty significant, especially because they can just like, you know, randomly mimic pod vanishes or like get them out kind of early with prep and, you know, prep vanish and then do other stuff. Like they can totally do a lot of really interesting stuff with their vanishes. And like we might see some of the Death Knight Valera now. We might see some Arcane Giants.
That would be, I mean, that would be neat to, you know, there's definitely seems like there's at least a couple of rogue decks possible that just weren't coming together, weren't standing up to all this nonsense that just got nerfed, or is soon to be nerfed, I guess. So,
yeah,
see more of Maev.
yeah, or Valera, hopefully.
Valera.
Maybe, nah, we'll never see Quest Rogue again. That's gone.
I saw a dog playing it last night.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, that's so funny. I mean, no one's going to see it coming.
Yeah, he was not doing too well, but he was trying.
I had a rogue play a Glacial Shard against me the other day, and I was like really spooked because I was playing Jade Druid. I was thinking like, oh my god, no. But they ended up just being some tempo deck, so I beat them easily.
That's funny.
Yep, swipe did work. Yeah. Also, actually, speaking of Ungoro classics, I was playing Secret Mage to great effect the other day, and that was really good. Secret Mage actually does quite well, like around the turn where the Druid wants to nourish.
Yeah, if there's enough Jade Druid.
Yeah, I mean, you'll pretty much never snipe their Infestation because they can always buffer like Wild Growth Innervate Infestation, so they'll never really get hit by Counterspell, and like you might not even take them off it, but you can definitely slow them down in the mid game, and take them off some of their ramp spells or like force them to play off curve with them, and that's good. That's very good. That's exactly like that's the same thing as blanking them.
Yeah, that can win you the game.
Yep. So that was a fun deck to play. But so speaking actually of Mage and Secrets, the other card that they mentioned here is Ice Block, and They mentioned that they're aware of some of the ongoing discussions like in the community about moving Ice Block to Hall of Fame, and they also said that they don't want to Hall of Fame cards mid-season. They want to do it at the beginning of the season, or not season, but the beginning of a year.
Yeah, and keeping consistent with that seems fine with me. And I mean, I haven't felt like Ice Block's unfair lately. I feel like like Innervate was unfair lately, so it didn't seem like Ice Block needed any touching to me.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like probably a lot worse in Wild where there's like stuff like Reno. But yeah, right here in Standard, Ice Block is not even seeing play in a lot of the Mage decks. definitely any of the more controlling ones are playing it, and it's fine in there. I think that like that's part of Mage's identity, and that's something they should continue to have access to. And if it becomes a problem, they'll move it to Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's like the way they have it here, like, as previously mentioned, moving cards to the Hall of Fame occurs at the start of the Hearthstone year, which will occur about, like, it seems like they only have Ice Block mentioned here because they know so many people have been talking about it, and they like, guys, shut up. Look at our new, we made a bunch of new ice cards. Look at our new ice cards. Complain about those.
In a way, though, it's nice. I mean, time and time again, they've shown us that they listen to the community and that like they have their ear to the ground.
True.
It's also nice that they didn't just like tear off these changes after week one and just be like, oh well, yeah, we listened to Reynad and Hall of Fame and Innervate midseason, and that's like the only change they made, and then we just lost a Pirate Warrior for the rest of the season. Like, it's nice that they didn't just do that. You know, even if these changes feel untimely and we had to, along with our exciting Frozen Throne cards, we had to give up the glorious Angoro meta for, you know, what was effectively a 4-deck meta, or I guess 5-deck meta. So, you know, even though we had to deal with all of that, it's ultimately better for us in the long run that Blizzard is like careful and judicious about the changes they make.
I totally agree with that. I think that these changes are really, really good. They were just like at first it was like it was almost like ending a relationship. You know, at first it's heartbreaking and like so painful, and you don't want to even accept it or think about it. But then like you go through like the text and you think about it and you see the explanation behind it, and then you feel better. You're like, yeah, this is for the best.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe we'll get to see Hunter. I'd hope so, or Rogue. I mean, the classes that the 3 classes I haven't golded yet are Rogue, Hunter, and Priest, and I think all of them are poised to get a little bit better after this patch. So
Warlock as well. You know, that like at the beginning of the Frozen Throne, it seemed like it really had a deck, and then just like Druid got like figured out. And also it was determined that things like Pirate Warrior were your only other options if you weren't going to play Druid, and Warlock was not prepared for that. But maybe, you know, it didn't get touched by any of this, so that's another class that kind of needed some oomph along with Rogue. I think Hunter might need more than a little oomph, but I'll be optimistic with you.
Yeah, I think it's I agree with you. I think that the Paladin deck is still going to be like strong, and maybe too strong for something like Hunter. You know, Hunter just like doesn't really have a way to deal with Righteous Protector.
But Hunter can easily play some of the crabs.
It's true. Yeah, actually, other than aggressive Druid, the best shell for the crabs was Hunter.
So that might, you know, at least like maybe mostly the Murloc crabs are going to be more relevant. So there might be more Quest Mage, which runs Murlocs.
Yeah, it does. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, Exodia Mage was a real deck that actually had like a pretty decent chance against pretty much everything but the aggro decks. It could beat Jade Druid just because it goes over the top of Jade Druid. So yeah, that's a deck we might see more of. Kind of funny because that deck is like just seemed so fake. Like when I heard about it. I remember hearing about the initial list when people were at the very beginning of Angoro and people were playing with Quest Mage. I made like the Arcane Giants list because I was thinking like, there's no way, you know, needing 5 cards to win the game instantly. There's no way that's actually good, but here we are.
Well, it's plus also completing the quest.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually, you know, it's 5 cards asterisk.
But you know, I've been playing Kazakus Quest Mage.
Wow.
Because Kazakus gives you a spell that wasn't starting in your deck.
So what do you use the quest for? Do you try to like instantly win, or do you just take another turn?
It's just like another card.
Okay, sure.
It's been like mostly like not good, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't think cashing out a card in your opening hand is worth like a 5 mana time walk.
It definitely confuses people. And especially like you just like jam your Sorcerer's Apprentice turn 2, and they just think like you have no idea how to play the deck, and then you play Kazakus, and then they're like, I don't even know anymore.
I also don't know how to play the deck. Yeah, that's funny.
I don't
That's really
recommend it though. Unless you
So,
want to have fun.
speaking of mage shenanigans, one thing that I had the pleasure of doing the other day was getting a simulacrum off my primordial glyph and using it to copy my arcane giant in secret mage.
Ooh, see, that's juicy.
Yeah, it was really good. I was just like kind of looking at what, like a shatter plus cone of cold simulacrum, some one pick like that, the ones that don't have fireball in them. But I decided that simulacrum would be insane, and it totally was.
Yeah, I had luck recently with the molten image, making another Lich King.
Ooh.
Playing the Kazakus quest mage deck, obviously, Lich King gives you a spell for the quest. Just really following some straightforward logic with these decisions.
Yes, sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. Some people run Kabbalah's Tome, others run Lich King,
and
or Kazakus,
or both.
Or both.
All three actually in this case. So I played Sorcerer's Apprentice, Molten Image, the Lich King, and then play a mirror image I got off Ghastly Conjurer, and then play Anti-Magic Shell.
Oh wow!
And my mirror images became 2/4 taunts that were untargetable. Yeah, it was like pretty. It didn't feel very magey to have a bunch of giant minions, but it worked.
No, that's like Druid.
That's the way to play a quest mage, though.
I guess so. You have to play it with anti-magic shell. That's so silly. Shall we end there?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to call it quits.
Yeah, totally. This is the deck you can look forward to playing now that these nerfs have happened.
That's very true.
So, as always, you can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/lastturnhs. Give us a like there. Come tweet at us. Retweet what we say. Listen to us. Yell at us. Do anything you want. You can find us on facebook.com/lastturnhs. We're also, as always, on iTunes, places like Google Play and Stitcher, SoundCloud. You can find us at soundcloud.com/lastturn. You can also find us on YouTube. So we always upload our episodes to our YouTube channel. And yeah, you can find us abound on other types of podcasty type websites.
You can also find us on Hearthstone.
Yep, totally.
We play that game sometimes. You find us in Azeroth.
You definitely never find me in Azeroth.
Yeah, no.
No, that's not as fun as it sounds.
You say that now, but then nope, I'm just kidding.
We will catch you guys next time.
Yeah, see you next turn, folks.